I'm Ronn McLane, and I am a meditation teacher.
Uh, I don't always start with the origin story, but I guess this time I'd like to, which is why did you start meditating? How did you get introduced to it?
Well, it's a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, actually. I, I'm going to start with I'm 53 years old, and 40 years ago, I was introduced to a guided meditation technique by a doctor to try to help mitigate migraine headaches.
Okay.
So I started practicing at about age 13 and really didn't know until I was about 20 or 21 that it was actually meditation. So that's where I would say the meditation journey started, when my cassette recording from the doctor had worn out. So
was it your teacher, or was it something he or she picked up from some store and gave to you? What was on it?
It was actually a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I was young. I don't really remember, but
Sure.
He literally just recorded a guided meditation that's, you can hear similar versions where, you're, descending a staircase, and each step that you take down, you're further and further into relaxation. And you get to the bottom and you go through a door, and you're on a lovely grassy knoll and taking a stroll. And he really just articulated that experience so well that I will say that technique did not help my migraines, but it would often help me fall asleep, and then I could sleep through the migraine. So I had sort of memorized his delivery. So even when the tape had sort of worn out, I would still just go in a dark room, and I still get terrible migraines, but I typically turn on a fan. It drowns out a little background noise, and put something cold over my eyes, and lay in a dark room and just try to get through it. So I would say at about age 20, I realized that I could watch the pain and separate it from the suffering. So I had a lot of struggle with the pain itself. So when the pain would sort of kick in, I started that dread of, how long is this going to last? Why does it hurt so bad? How can I make it go away? It was just the narrative, the dialogue that just wouldn't stop, and it would cause me to panic. And so over time, I learned, in my way, to just sort of separate, and I was able to just lay there and sort of watch, what does the sensation of pain feel like? Where do I feel it? What does it feel like? Etc. So that was really my sort of introduction into all of it. And then once that tape wore out, yes, I went to Barnes and Noble, and I'm looking through all the CD stacks and going, okay, this is a guided meditation. This is one. So I ended up with 10 of them that I brought home, and would just lay and listen to those. And of course, there's whale sounds and someone in a lovely accent telling you to relax and close your eyes. And I loved that. I really just got into it. It was just part of my daily, medication, really, just to kind of get through my days.
And I wondered how bad. So from that's a long stretch for a 13-year-old to keep using a guided meditation. So that's quite impressive, which means you were set on a path early on of regular practice. Was it daily by that point, or really only when symptoms came on? What?
At that point, it was only when symptoms came on. Okay. But I could have, depending on sort of my level of, anxiety, I know now is sort of part of the root of this issue. Depending on the level of anxiety, I may have 3 or 4 in a week.
Okay.
So there was always that. So I was also raised Catholic, so I had a pretty good religious practice as well. So I was in the choir, and I liked to sort of do rosaries and things like that. So I did that until I was about 16.
And then did you, till 16, does that mean you peeled off from the church at some point in your teenage years?
I fled.
You fled, actively fled. You didn't sort of gently wander away. You're like,
I fled. I had kind of a, it was a guiding experience. I will call it that. A shitty experience is probably a little bit more descriptive.
More honest, okay.
Where I actually went to my priest and said, I think I might be one of those homosexuals. And his response was, he's quote, there are not enough Hail Marys to keep you out of hell. And I tried to, explain, I haven't acted on this. I'm 16 years old. I just think that this may be, part of me. And he was not cool about it. So I fled in shame and terror, quite frankly, and avoided all of it for probably a good 15 years after that.
Catholicism or religion in general?
Religion in general.
Okay.
I tried on a few things that seemed a little new agey, and they always seemed a little too far woo-woo for me.
Okay. So you had the tape died, your religion shifted during this period, and then you went and got all these tapes and realized guided meditation, it wasn't just that one tape. Like, you're like, I kind of like the whale sounds.
There's
and I kind of
like whole industry about this.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm all about it. And look, there's a book. And
so where did it go from there? So now you're experimenting with lots of different guided meditations. Where did your meditation practice, how did things shift from your early 20s?
So I meditated for a long time. I was, like I said, I tried on, some different things. I tried on some of the law of attraction stuff, and, maybe a little bit of chakra, trying to understand chakra healing and things. And it just didn't really resonate.
Okay.
A little bit of it did, but then I would, just disengage over a little bit of time. And, the meditation thing just stuck around because of the headaches, because the headaches were still there. I would still use the meditation, and knowing now that it was called meditation, and knowing that there were some techniques I could, actually sit and, cross-legged on the floor, which I still like, surprisingly. And I had just gotten out of a long relationship, and I had ended a portion of my career. I worked in the hotel industry for a long time. Okay. I just ended that. And I was dating a guy that was a lot younger than me, and he was just sweet and lovely, but he cried a lot. And I felt really bad because he was just in so much turmoil. It wasn't about me. It was, it was his inner thing. And I had heard that locally there was a church that did just open meditations twice a day. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, why don't we go to this meditation thing, thinking, maybe he'll find a little relief, and sure, I'll find out what it's like to meditate in a group. So we did that, and I stayed and he left. So I met a woman there that she led this meditation, and it was fantastic for me. I had never really experienced anything quite like it. And I ended up talking to her, and she said, hey, there's, I've got a Buddhist group that meets on Sundays. I'm like, what does that mean? Do I need a uniform, or, do I what do I do? And she said, just show up and, wear what you wear and just do what you do. And I showed up, and again, it just clicked with me. I thought, oh, this is really comfortable. And she actually, not long after that, we developed a friendship, and she introduced me to my root teacher, who is Lama Surya. And I ended up driving out to Boulder, Colorado to be his attendant and assist him. He was going to be a keynote speaker for one of the first Buddhist Geeks conferences in Boulder. And I thought, this guy is crazy and out of this world. And I couldn't take my eyes off of him, and I couldn't stop listening to him because he made so much sense to me. So I ended up working for him and following him around the country and leading. I managed his retreats and his nonprofit organization for a number of years, and just sort of landed in my own seat. So I've been teaching meditation for the last 11 years.
Okay.
And that's expanded. I also teach Buddhism and helped to found the Kansas City Buddhist Center. And I also created, kind of my passion project, which is Cultivate Meditation and Cultivate Meditation Academy. So I'm not only teaching people and leading people in meditation in a virtual studio, I'm also teaching people to be meditation teachers.
Can I ask you, you said Lama Surya Das was your root teacher. So I know lineage is extremely, it's contested, it's tricky, it's argued over all over the world in Buddhism, but it's super important. So when you say he was your root, so what does that mean? And then who is his root teacher, and is he able to carry it back so far?
Yes. Well, and so he's got a long lineage in the Tibetan.
Okay.
He actually went and trained, in, India, and, in the 60s and 70s, he was in silent retreat for nearly 9 years with his root teachers. And he's probably the first American Lama to train in that specific way, and under the guise of these phenomenal teachers who are mostly gone now. So he really has Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. There's a beautiful documentary about him called Brilliant Moon. That was the Lama that made him a Lama.
Okay.
So he has that, and there's so many, it's hard to name them all, but he's literally got a trove of photos of his teachers on his altar wherever he is.
So Lama to Lama, and then what was your experience so working with him is one thing, but then also becoming part of this lineage or tradition,
right? What
was necessary in that? What did that look like? And I don't know, what did it look like to be conferred with anything in that fashion?
Right. It's interesting. And I'll say that, I have sort of affiliation with two different schools and two different lineages. So he's really my root teacher, and he really introduced me to Buddhism, and I'll get into the specific note of that in a moment. But then I also have another teacher that I met up with and began following probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago, that is local, that introduced me to the Zen lineages as well. So I have a little training on that side too. But Lama Surya Das practices what's called Dzogchen. It's Dzogchen, Dzogchen. And it's a Bon practice. So it actually predates Hinduism. So if you look at the sort of evolution of where Buddhism came from, Buddhism sort of born out of Hinduism, and Bon was predating Hinduism. So it's very old, and it's not particularly Buddhist. It's been adopted and archived and kept alive by the Tibetan Buddhists.
Okay.
So it's a practice that has been folded into and very closely resembles Mahamudra in the Tibetan lineage. So they sort of flow together. Okay. But it translates as the natural great perfection. So if you think about just that, the base of everything is as it should be. There is nothing to change. So that means it's not anyone's job to go and change the nature of a tree, or change the nature of a thought, or someone else's behavior. These things are all occurring as they should in just lawful birthing, right? Everything's just sort of arriving as it should. So when we can take that posture and just really settle into what our own experience is, because really that's the only thing I have to control, is my own experience and my own reactions to what is happening. And that karmically will change the things around me.
Let me ask you something about that, because I think I am specifically wrestling with a circularity problem personally right now in studying Buddhism and all the things I'm looking at. This idea is very comforting, challenging, that there is, things when you talk about this is just like this is just like that. This is how things are arising in this moment. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to be. But that doesn't make sort of sense in the normal, superficial, regular world, because of course, even as you said, there's some work you're doing on yourself. There's some way in which you're improving your awareness of things. And so therefore there are things to do, be and become, even though at the fundament of some of these lines in Buddhism, there is nothing to do. Everything is perfect as it is. But how can everything be perfect as it is and also working to change something inside of that structure?
I think the only thing to change is my attitude about what is happening. And when we have sort of this, I'm going to call it, enlightened view. And that just, to me, that means all the lights are on. We see things as they are. And when I can see things as they are, and I'm going to give you an example, when I see agitation or irritation in myself, and I can do some work and understand, what's this agitation, what's this irritation about? For me, I am most irritable, I'm most agitated when I'm driving. And when other people start to cut me off, I get even angry. So in trying to understand, because I thought I just shouldn't drive.
Right.
But that's not the answer. The answer is understanding what's actually happening in my experience. So understanding and taking that sort of deep look, and sometimes it's uncomfortable, it's often uncomfortable to take that deep look and understand, what do I really feel at my core that's making me react in this way? And for me, it's safety. I don't feel safe. I was, when I kind of plucked all this apart, I was in a nasty bus wreck when I was in high school, and I carry that with me. I carry that experience of being in that accident with me. And when someone, is being unsafe around me, I feel it viscerally. Yes. So when I can understand that about myself, I can understand that trait in someone else. So when we see things as they are, and we can react in a skillful way, understanding that person over there that's behaving very badly is having a rough time because I've been in that same place. So that's kind of the unfolding of it and the practical side of it, because I really like the practical end of all of this. It's not just sort of sitting down and getting blissed out, because that's nice, but it doesn't really get you that far. That's sort of the shallow end of the ocean.
Whatever feeling, I mean, obviously, right, you can sit down and meditate to get a feeling. Right. I want to feel this way. I like relax. It when I'm right.
You can relax. That's the very like if you think about the ocean and that lovely place that you like to go walk around and sit, and feel the mist and the breeze and try to watch a dolphin in the distance. That's the easy place. A mile out, it's scary.
So then this is perfect, because I want to carry it back to the meditation, because I actually think some people respond to meditation and they do find it. Some people like it because it calms them down. So they go do a 5-mile run and they sit down and meditate on their porch with the sound of the ocean and the tinkling of a wind chime. Right. And they feel good. It gives them a feeling of euphoria and it starts them off on their day, and they get that. Other people have the experience. It's unsettling. They go meditate and they start out in the ocean and they find themselves in deep waters. Right. There's uncomfortable stuff popping up.
Right.
Tell me all your thoughts about those two kinds of things you can get from meditation, where it's carrying people, maybe what meditation does for you, or if there's any is there a should meditation do something?
Well, I think, for me, I know that my first experience with my teacher was in the deep end. Like he just he throws you he throws everyone in the deep end. There is no casual way of like, let's just get our feet wet. There's none of that. It's all in the deep end of here's where you are. And it's like, holy Moses, what is this? Like, this is amazing and frightening at the same time. And I want to try it again. So I would say there's a couple different ways, and you have to really just pick your own path. So if you prefer to, get used to the water as you sort of get deeper and deeper, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you really feel like you need to jump off into the deep end and just sink or swim, that's okay too. And you figure it out both ways.
Okay, so you do feel like you get somewhere. So tell me what could happen. I know there are also within Buddhism, which deals so much with meditation, there are many, many views about what's happening in meditation. Where are you getting? Where are you going? Where are you coming from? Where are you supposed to be going? Maybe all kinds of basically similes, all these experts saying meditation's like this, meditation's like that, and then eventually get down to that base level. Meditation just is what it is. For you, is what it is. Right. What is meditation, so that it encompasses all that experience? So the people in the shallows, the people in the deeps, the people who don't have a goal for meditation, the people who are trying to get somewhere with meditation. I don't know. What is that?
Right. I teach both ways. I teach, just getting your feet wet and, starting with something as simple as watching your breath. Just that sensation of, if you're just paying attention, breathing through your nose, how it feels cool when you breathe in and then warm when you breathe out. And just watching that is physically, viscerally going to calm your body. Like it just does. It's how we can calm down. And I also teach the deep end. So if you want to just be, thrown off the end of the boat, I'll throw you off the end of the boat, and I'll be there when you come back up and have questions. And that's the thing.
Tell me what that looks. What does the deep end look like?
It's kind of like I said earlier. I make it a point not to really spell out. I don't want to tell you about how it feels for me to meditate, because then you might go try to do exactly that, and it's different for each one of us. So I just want to tell you how to get there, and then you go have a look around yourself. Like when you're looking at houses and the realtor says, you go in and check things out and then I'll meet you out back. That's the same kind of approach. So you go in, walk around and see what you feel and think, and you might pop right back out and go, oh no, that was frightening. And we'll talk about, what's frightening. what's got you. But I think for most, we don't get to meditation because we're just bored and want to try something out. We're often, as we are with our religious practices, we're hurting in some way. We're suffering in a way that we need relief. So when I show up for meditation, even if I don't feel like it, I'm jumping in. Like Mel Robbins says about, her 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just do it. So I 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, sit right there on that cushion, like just sit my butt down. And sometimes it's really easy, and I just drift right into it, and I can see the bliss, and I can see the agitation in myself. I can see the restlessness in myself. But there's other days where I'm like, I don't want to do this. This is just uncomfortable, and I want to get up, and I want to go run around the block or get away. And for me, I'm working a lot with anxiety and depression and things that have been there really all of my life. Mm-hmm. So getting at the base of, where do I feel this anxiety? What is the physical form of my anxiety? Where is it? What is its nature? How does it feel? Because I know, part of it is just chemistry. Part of it is just my reaction to whatever. Yeah. Maybe the barometric pressure is different than it was yesterday, and I just wake up and feel restless and agitated. So I sort of medicate with meditate.
I'm thinking about as a meditation teacher, you have certain techniques. Right. You don't want to tell people what it's going to feel like.
No, I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell you where the gas pedal is and where the brake is, and how to start the ignition, and how you should sit in the seat. I'll give you all those cues, and then you get to kind of go as deep as you want to go. And sometimes it just happens, it's the right atmosphere, and you just zip right in and have a deep experience. And that, to me, that depth is formed by clarity. So it's not, I may see fear or I may see agitation, but I see it for what it is. So I'm not reacting and responding in a panicked way because I feel a certain way. I'm kind of unpacking it and wandering around it within that experience, and just investigating, really just looking, seeing, what is this?
Yeah, when you described in the very beginning, when you were talking about your first experiences with meditation and dealing with migraine pain, and then saying, I could see where the pain was, and then I could see where all the stuff I'm bringing to the pain, or all the stories I tell myself about what that pain means. And I'm completely obsessed with the Buddhist pitch about the second dart. Like, you can't avoid, if you're feeling anxious, just like you said, you can't avoid those physical sensations of anxiety are real. But then what's all the extra stuff you're bringing in that's causing you more pain that you wouldn't need to feel?
Well, and I will say, that, to really unpack it, you really unpack what is even real. What is, well, because think about like this, because we think of physical pain as real.
We do.
What is that? So it's, it's things firing within this human physical form that are firing like little electrical impulses that are going back to a brain and going, this is pain. Right. Is that really real? Can you really kind of hold that in your hand? Can I hand you pain and say, try this out? This is terrible. Try it.
Right.
It's so you really start to unpack what is real and what is narrative, and what is conditioned, certainly there's a sensation when we put our hand on the hot stove, and there's a reaction next time when we see the hot stove and I don't want to touch that because it's hot.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of that. And, by the time you get to, 40 or 50 years old, you've got a whole, truckload of stuff that you don't want to touch.
Right. You've cataloged a lot of stuff in your,
because it hurts. Yeah. Right. So then, that kind of looks like that. So I shouldn't touch that either. And now we've got, this cyclical sort of neuroses that starts happening within our brains, and we become compact and stressed out, and I don't want to touch anything. I don't want to go anywhere. Now I don't want to leave my house. It freaks me out to go to the grocery store, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Is there a conflict? So one of the things you were describing, I'm reading a book by a philosopher on desire, and he very much paints this, he includes stuff about Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, and also about science. We are built to be desiring creatures. And then Buddha comes along and makes this pitch that, your problems are caused by your desiring, but we literally are alive today because our forebears throughout history desired things. And because the things they desired allowed them to have more kids, be more successful, not get eaten.
Right.
It sometimes feels like this awareness that comes with meditation and the world, it does come in conflict with our biological or societal level of success. Like, what does success look like? How does that manifest? How do your intuition, your insights that come with meditation, how do those manifest as success, or how do those integrate with your life as a human being? Do they change what you want out of life? Do they change what you desire? Or do they just make you more aware of what you would normally desire and you desire it less, or what's happening?
I don't think you desire it less. I think there, in the field of sort of enlightenment, if we're trying to become more enlightened people, that really means, think about a big dark room, and you turn on all these lights that illuminate every corner. There's no darkness left in the room, and you can really see whatever's there, right? So, that thing that was lurking in the corner is no longer lurking. It's just a shoe, it's just a thing. And you start to understand the nature of whatever you're examining. So, what I heard you say about desire was, attraction, and I'm attracted to the things that I like. And that's not wrong. Where we kind of go wrong is where we lose touch with the knowing that we're attracted to something, instead of just being pulled by it constantly, pulled by our preferences. So when I'm just pulled towards things that I want and pulled away from, trying to pull myself or push my way away from those things that I don't want, then it becomes reactionary, and I become, greedy or a jerk, or, reacting badly for all of us. So I think there's a difference between attraction and attachment. So the attachment, and we use that word a lot in the translation of Buddhism, that understanding attachment. So we're naturally attached to loved ones, to things we like, and we feel bad when they go away. So again, we've now had this experience of, we had something that we liked and it went away, whether it was a person or a thing, it was stolen, it was wrecked or lost, and we felt terrible about it. So then now we've got this condition of, we want to hold on to things, and that's the basis of attachment. So when we can realize, I really like this thing and I appreciate this thing that I have and that I'm experiencing, but if it goes away, I'm not destroyed. I'm still here. I am. Just at the basic root of everything is I am, until I'm not.
Right. So that's fascinating too. That again, that carries also back to this meditation the approach in some of these things to keep digging down into self and to identify that all the things that are not self, the things you thought were self are not self.
Yeah.
And that it seems, then it gets real philosophical, complicated. There's long, complicated philosophical arguments in Buddhism about what that means, self and not self.
Right.
For you, at the base of meditation, is there an absolute self, or is it one of those paradoxes where self and not self coexist as sides of the same coin? How do you look at it?
I'm super practical. So I noodled on that one forever. And I it annoyed me because I'm like, what is no self? Like I feel like I can feel this. This is, I can smash my hand with a hammer and that I feel that. You can't tell me that it doesn't exist. So there's a couple of things here. So self, I want to explain as anything that the ego derives as this relative being. So this is Ron. Ron has feelings. Ron has fat cells. Ron has sinus issues. Ron has headaches. Ron gets hungry, and Ron poops.
Okay.
Like it's all of that package. So the things I think, smell, taste, touch, all the senses, that's the self, the relative self. And then there's this ultimate. So then we're balancing, and that's one of the things I'm attracted to about the Dzogchen practices, is that we're simultaneously in this relative self, sort of working up from the ground. Think of yourself walking up the mountain path. But then there's this ultimate self that's more like this mythical bird that is above everything, that can sort of see the Google landscape below you. And you can see where the path is going. You understand the terrain, but there's this relative self that still has feet on the path. So these are simultaneously working. So we say, climbing up and swooping down simultaneously. So these things are both there. So there's also a thing that is this, I'll call it pervasive or primordial consciousness that is attached to sort of everythingness. So this is our interconnectedness. And this is the thing that in quantum physics a few years ago was, validated, and they found it in quantum physics called the unified field. So this is the thing that connects everything. So everything that we are, everything that we experience, all comes out of this unified field. And that is science catching up with Buddhism. And that I get super geeked out about that because it's practical. I can understand that. I mean, it's heady, but at the same time, I can get that, there's that interconnectedness that when this physical form dies, because it does, that's one of the gates to our understanding is this physical form, and everything around me is impermanent. The no self part, which we call anatta, is the piece of us that's not separate from that field. So when this fades, it goes back to that field. Like it comes apart. It's the second law of thermodynamics. Everything that comes together also comes apart, and then comes together in another way and comes apart. There's nothing that's born, nothing that dies. It's all contained within. So this, to me, is the practical part of Buddhism that I get super duper geeked out about, because it's calming to me. There's nothing that I have to hope for. I can see scientifically that there's some proof that I like.
In what ways has meditation been challenging? So when you described when you met your root teacher and the root teacher introduced you to meditation, you're like, it was into the deep end right then.
Right.
Unsettling, challenging. In what ways is meditation? It sounds like there's lots of ways in which it can be calm. In what ways is it challenging that you find things you didn't want to see, and you're aware of truths that are not comfortable and you wish they were not like that?
I often talk about this being sort of like those hoarder houses where you just have to go through room by room and piece by piece, and you're going to find something in there that you don't want to see. Like there's something bad at the bottom of that pile. I've watched enough of those of those shows to know something's dead in there, and you're going to find it, and it's going to be unpleasant. So I think that to me is the challenging part, is when when we sit down, we know that there's a possibility that today we're going to scratch into something that is really uncomfortable, and I don't really want to deal with it. I would rather be blissed out and have a cool, cool float, no biggie. But sometimes we run across the things that just have to be cleaned out, and once they're out, they're out. But discovering them is unpleasant at times. So that's, to me, the most challenging thing.
Have you seen in your own experience, are there people who, I've seen this in people who go to therapy. I've seen this in people who sit in rooms and try to discuss things and just can't confront them. And it reminds me of what psychiatrists have to deal with people with post-traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes in this moment, the person can't face that, but you just watch, they bounce off the thing and they're like, I can't deal with this.
Right.
Do some people have you seen people just walk away? They're like, look, I like this meditation thing. I can't listen to my thoughts, so I got to go. No thoughts for me.
Yeah. And, I understand and respect that. And I also know, I've been doing it long enough that the person who walks away now may come back and say, okay, now I kind of understand that thing you used to say. I was really annoyed by what you said before. And now I've sat with it long enough, because again, we're all just doing this because we suffer. Things suck. So we're trying to find a way out of the suckiness. So something's going to bring us back, and we're going to go back to, rehab in a way, to try to fix what's wrong. So I think that's notable, and this may not be the thing, because it's not the only way to find relief from suffering. It's a good way, but there are other ways. So I think there are 1,000 flavors of relief, and you have to pick your flavor or flavor combinations. I combine, several things to get to what's useful for me. I do a lot of chanting, like Tibetan chanting, and I would have never thought that I would have done that. I was always been a singer. I was in in the church choir and all of that, but I didn't see myself singing mantra and finding instruments to accompany myself with mantra and finding relief from that. I would have never guessed that, but it's part of my daily practice.
A different flavor other than silent or guided sitting meditation.
And specifically, like on the days that it's easy, I can sit on that seat and I can be as quiet as a little mouse. And the days where it sucks, I'm going to chant. And, sometimes that's just how we kind of, it's no different. I'm also, an avid cyclist. If I get on that bike and I have to be very, very present, those tires are about an inch wide. And if you find just the right rock or stick, you're going to end up on your butt. So, or on your head, one of those options. So I'm very meditative when I'm physical like that and, going 10 miles or 15 miles an hour on a bike. So that there are different flavors in that specific way. I also like to crochet. It's very meditative. So it's not just about closing your eyes and sitting on the floor. Folks with PTSD a lot of times have trouble closing their eyes in meditation because they start feeling ungrounded and fearful. The Dzogchen practice is open eye, even slack jaw, just sitting relaxed, just letting everything be as it is. So it's not refrained. It's not trying to ward anything off or chase the thoughts away. It's just letting them do what they do, and you just watch.
Have you also, in the meditation, are there practices in your work you've done about the mortality stuff? I mean, a lot of times they try to sort of, if you're having trouble with lust and you think about how bodies are nasty, if you're struggling with mortality, you do the meditations about how horrible and nasty dead bodies are. Have you done any? Have you played with any of that?
Well, that's so calming to think about.
That's what I'm saying. Not calming at all.
No, I mean, I've done a lot of work on impermanence and understanding impermanence, because, we can think about, it's easier to think about, your favorite pen and how you lost it and you feel sad about that. Or, the diamond ring that you had that somebody stole. It's easy to think about that. It's really hard to think about the physical body. My parents still say about death, they still say, they call it the unthinkable. I'm like,
among them, they call it the unthinkable.
The unthinkable. If the unthinkable happens and I die, I'm like, you mean the inevitable? Right. And of course, then we fight. But
right, okay.
Because they don't want to think about that. They want to think that some miracle is going to happen, and many people do. That things are just going to go their way, and they are not going to have to do that dying thing. Like, it's just not going to happen. So I've done a lot of work, in my practice on impermanence, and there's some of the Tibetan practices that are a little,
the visualizations are a little, they can be particularly vivid, I guess.
They can be vivid. So when people have passed around me, I have a version, and it's kind of a Cliff Notes version of the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Okay.
And this is a practice that you literally read aloud to the person who has passed. And it's sort of instructions on how to navigate this bodiless nature.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be crazy. So the Tibetan Book of the Dead, again, it's super vivid in here's what you can expect on day 7. Like, here's your, so you're like Julie, the cruise director with this thing. And, I'm going to guide you through it. It's a great practice for grieving. So when you, consider yourself talking to the person who has, departed, and you're helping them to guide through the bardo, or that sort of thing between death and rebirth. Which is an interesting concept. Of course, I don't know if it's true, but I will allow it. I'm going to allow it and every other thing as a possibility.
Right.
So I've actually found some comfort in reading that text, that translated text, and there are many versions of it, but, I found a nice brief one on Kindle.
Yeah.
Which seems odd, but seems like it should be a very pretty book that I'm reading to the dead, but no, it's from my Kindle.
Well, truly ephemeral, just digital pixels on your screen, and will pass away as soon as you turn your device off.
Right, exactly. Or when the battery dies too.
What do you do when people come and they find out you teach meditation? What either advice or what reference do you point them to, or what do you suggest they try? Do you have some regular things, or do you talk to people to find out what would work for them? What do you do?
Yeah, I think the most common question I have from folks is, I'm interested in Buddhism. What should I read?
Of course.
And my first response is nothing. Read nothing. Because really, and where this is where the discomfort starts, is that you can't really learn enlightenment from a book.
Yeah.
You can read about it, and you don't really have a context for what it's saying. So where the rubber meets the road is this practice. So it's the practice of sitting and, quieting yourself and quieting your neuroses. So you can sort of just take that bright look around and see, what's that? Oh, that's irritation that is arising, or that's lust, or that's fear, or whatever it may be. And you start to understand. Then when you read it, you're like, oh, that's that thing I experienced in a little bit of, contextual, learning. So, if you really, really want to read about Buddhism and see kind of the shell of what the teachings look like, Awakening the Buddha Within by Lama Surya is one of the quintessential books, American or Western books on Buddhism. And it covers, the basics of Buddhism. And it's really well written. It's really, it's a really good start, in my opinion. It's not too heady. It's just enough to kind of give you an idea of what Buddhism is about.
Yeah.
And from a meditation standpoint, I say let someone guide you. Okay. And whether you pick one of those lovely apps, I'm on Insight Timer, which I really like. But one of the rules I have is that I can't be a good teacher if I'm not a good student. So I am a perpetual student. So I listen to other people's meditations, and I participate in other people's retreats and read other people's materials and books and listen to lectures by them. Yeah. Because I think it's really important for you to just hear those nuances that I may say it in a different way than someone else. And one of those ways may actually resonate with you. So listen a lot and try on as many as you want. Calm, the Calm app is great. Insight Timer, there's several. I think there's a new one every day. I'm writing one actually right now for Cultivate Meditation.
Oh, nice.
That's, not super guided, but more experiential, where you can, just watch waves and listen to the sounds for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, just as getting your toes in the water. But, if you really want to jump off the pier or off the boat in the deep water, right. You really need a teacher, because you need to be able to ask questions. So don't just try to read somebody's profound teaching if you can't ask them questions or ask someone questions.